It's the boy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Anime House. Today we have a special guest with us. If you want to introduce yourself,
Hey, I'm Steven. I enjoy anime, I enjoy music, and overanalyzing all of them.
let's go.
Yeah, he's
Mhm.
in a good place. I like hearing Steve's opinions. He's a good close friend of mine. Today we have a special episode. Uh it's a song. It's a Mariner's Revenge song by the Decemberists, but in particular we're gonna be discussing the animation from Glitter Sharks, which is going on 7 million views at the moment. Well, 7.5 million views on the upper side of that. And I found this song like about 2 years ago, and I thought it was sick and the accompany animation is just beautiful, and I shared it with all of my friends thinking they would all have the same opinion as me because they know what good taste is, or so I thought, and everyone completely clowned at me for a couple of months. Steve, do you remember that?
Dude, I remember everyone clowning on you over one song, and I didn't understand it. I was just like, it's just a song. How could it be bad?
And then did you watch it during that
Dude, it
time, or
took
did
me
you?
forever. I don't touch anything unless like I don't know. If you tell me to do something, I won't do it.
Okay, yeah. So it took Steve 2 years, but he finally got to it, and he's like, "Damn, this is kind of gas."
Yes. I remember I'm like, hey, this song is actually good. Who was the guy who showed me this song? And I just started posting it everywhere, showing everyone.
And
And
I was like, yeah, that's it, Steve. You've got to it. It took 2 years, you know. Don't worry, man. In like 4 years, you'll finally get around to watching all of Attack on Titan, and then we can talk about it.
Don't worry about it. You're not missing out. Just read it.
He doesn't read,
that's
bro.
even harder. Bro, asking me to read.
All right, but I think how about this, Nikhil? How about you give the rundown of your opinion? Because you have the freshest eyes on this one, or the freshest ears, eyes, everything involved.
Yeah, I literally just rewatched it before we did this, but yeah. So I mean, it's pretty good. I like Steve. I very much enjoy music. I grew up pretty much listening to music 24/7, and I still do now. I listen to music constantly. So I love it when a story is kind of written in the song. And first of all, in the video, the animation was really, really good. I really enjoyed the animation. I think it was really fantastic. The story itself, I mean, it was basically a story about revenge, but I thought it was fairly interesting and unique in terms of kind of like not only how the show was presented, very concise, very straightforward, but me, Francisco, and Steve were talking about this right before we hopped on. Very much reminiscent of Flapjack for those who have watched it. The main character, the main pirate, I forgot his name. The ugly, weird dude is the best way to put it. Not Flapjack. The captain, I think his name was Captain. His whole thing was also on like revenge and getting some pirate bounty, booty, whatever it was. So, I mean, there are some callbacks or comparisons that could be made there. What I liked the most about it, though, I think, was not only like in the video, not only just the animation, but also the way the song was presented and how it drove like a thematic overview of like revenge. But the way the story was presented really felt like a short children's story almost. I mean, it wasn't, but like it felt like it. It was very dark, very grim. But it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely one of those revenge songs. And I know I mentioned this to Steve, and then this is like just the storytelling aspect, right? Because we actually decided to do something, because usually we do anime or we do a movie or we do something, but in general, we're just doing things that we enjoy. And I thought to myself that we haven't done anything like, the medium of music itself and, how good it is as a storytelling, which, the song itself is very I get very folk vibes from it in that respect. I don't know of a good way to describe the music itself. I think Steven might be able to help us with that, but definitely wanted
Shanty. It's shanty music.
shanty. Okay, so yeah, it's a shanty. Steve, would you agree that it gets shanty vibes?
Oh yeah, 100%.
And if you have any other, input regarding like the actual music itself and the instruments and maybe some leitmotifs that you hear, that I think this would be a good time to talk about it before I start talking about character arcs or like.
Yeah, so just a quick comment on like the genre of it. So, folk is a pretty large umbrella term for describing music. And shanty is a type of folk that's based off of a mariner's life. So like a sailor song, sailor songs are folk music, but specific to the context of being out at sea. And also just it being storytelling in general would definitely fit with it too, because they would sing songs and those songs would tell stories, and perhaps those stories could be useful information when you're out there.
Definitely. Yeah. If anyone, I mean, we talk about One Piece pretty often. So like the shanty of One Piece is Bin Sake. So it's always nice to make callbacks like this. But I do want to mention that I really love how distilled of a revenge song this is, because I don't think a revenge story will ever go bad in our lifetime. And I think this is a good opportunity to mention, like, because often people talk about different character arcs within stories, and this one's definitely one of the more negative character arcs. And usually we see positive character arcs because, one, we like, most of us would enjoy a good uplifting story at the end of a session, whatever might be the case. But this one takes the aspect of a negative character arc. In particular, you can usually categorize these negative character arcs into three types, right? Those three types are the disillusionment arc, the fall arc, where you double down on the lie that the character believes, right? It's very common for a fall arc to be one. Well, in the story that we're talking about, right, in the video, Mariner's Revenge Song, it actually takes the place. The negative character arc is the fall arc, because, spoiler alert, the character doubles down on the lie. The lie being that he's not gonna get his mother's love unless he fulfills her desire, which is to kill this guy who wronged them. And the other type is the corruption arc. You can usually think about that one as the fallen hero arc, and that one can even split into two types. And it's really easy to remember these being, as I like to use examples of stories, right? We cannot forget Anakin Skywalker, right? His fall from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader, and then something more classical, quote unquote, would be Paradise Lost is Lucifer. So the aspects that deals with those corruption arcs is that there's a paradigm shift. In the case of the Paradise Lost Lucifer situation, the paradigm shift is with society. Before, he was in the righteous, right? Everyone, what he did was righteous, but with the introduction of humanity, what was once righteous is no longer the case. So it's not the case that he has changed; it's more so that everyone around him has changed. And then the other hand, the paradigm shift within Anakin Sky, it's, instead of being external, it's internal, right? The paradigm shift within him is that he no longer believes that the Jedi is the correct path, or for what he wants to accomplish, which is saving the people that he loves. The Jedi path is not going to be able to get him there. And the disillusionment arc, that one's really, it's not so that it's a downer. Well, the, that one's really funny. Okay, it's not the case that the character necessarily is in a worse situation. It's more so that it's more of a downer kind of a story. Think of stories that are like noir or neo-noir. So a really good example, if anyone's familiar with, is with Chinatown. At the end of the story, that the characters themselves learn more of the truth of the universe, but it just turns out that life sucks and everything's even worse than before. Another good example would be The Great Gatsby, and that, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about another aspect of storytelling, right? The understanding that within every protagonist or within every character that you write, if they're gonna be undergoing a character arc, there's a couple things that needs to be set up, right? One of them is that they need to believe a lie of how they think things are working, right? And that lie is reinforced by this ghost or this wound, or I can probably talk about a bit later. But what's gonna happen there is that the lie versus the truth, or you can even think about these as what they want versus what they need to become a more fulfilled character. And I'm getting a bunch of these things from like the book that I actually read every now and then. I just have lying around. It's a book called Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Whalen. It's the title is very descriptive. It pretty much tells you what it's going to be about. And explains character types a bit, like I just mentioned, by providing some examples. So if anyone's interested in like reading like, books involving just storytelling in general, that's a pretty good one to go about. But yeah, I mentioned the lie, I mentioned the truth. I gave you some examples of different negative character arcs that exist there. in general, or they kind of are the exact they structurally they are the reversed of a positive character arc. And of course, the traditional revenge story is the fall arc, right? When they like double down on the lie, which is beautiful. I mean, it's always fun to see someone become more deprived, and I think it's interesting. It does for war storytelling, but it requires a very tactful and very skilled author or writer or whatever might be the case. But yeah, going more into the wound, right? The wound of a character and how it lines up with the lie itself. And the wound usually deals with like the ghost within the story, and Mariner's Revenge like is a very T for T kind of situation where like the inherent ghost of the character or the protagonist is the person's mom, who is progressively telling him, "Hey, I need you to go out there and kill that person who just ruined me. I don't even care if you're my son or if I should like want you to have a good life. I just want him to just completely destroy this guy because he's getting older. You're getting older, but you're also getting like to the prime of your youth, and you're just gonna spend the rest of your life dealing with my revenge. Please go do that." And of course, because this is a negative character arc, and that's the aspect with revenge songs. Eventually, he finds this guy. The circumstances surrounding how he ends up finding the guy are really interesting to begin with, because it brings up a good. It begins in the intro. I think I'm gonna actually Nikki or Steven, talk about the actual song itself and the plot, but I want to just discuss how this one falls into just the guy. It's a usual revenge song where he goes out, finds a guy, and then kills him, and then just decides, you know what, my life sucks. I'm just gonna commit to this one. I don't know, like
Goal of revenge, perhaps.
yeah, exactly. Like this one thing is just gonna be my entire life. That's all it is.
Mm.
But we're talking a lot about like this song without actually like going through the like what actually happens. Steve or Nikhil, do you want to like chime in on this?
So following Chucho's format of a character getting a wound, um, he's talking about how when he introduces himself, we kind of get an idea about where the wound comes from. That this was a man who fell in love with his mother, and given that this is during a time where being out at sea is pretty big, I would imagine it's like patriarchal in its culture. So if the widow were to marry another person, that person would be in charge of their wealth. So it's a great responsibility onto this young guy that this mother marries or hangs with, and he blows the money entirely, and like utterly ruins an entire family by getting drunk, uh, getting whores, hookers, all that stuff. So like, uh, it's a great wound that's created there, and from there the mother kind of gives her like martyr, like gives the quest to this young boy to go enact revenge, and pretty much the rest of the I'd say probably the first third introducing it, we understand the wound, and the next two parts we're kind of like uh, we're in for the ride to enact that revenge, or how how much it engulfs him when he gets closer and closer to it, and like that's his whole life.
Exactly. I also like the how the story actually begins. I think it's very cheeky about how our protagonist is like, we got swallowed by a whale. Well, that sucks. I guess we have some time to kill. How about I tell you how I got here? Because that time for kill has a kind of like a double entendre meaning in a sense, right? Because he's going to use that time to literally kill him later on, but it can also be used as a people say like, time to kill. It's like, okay, so we're not doing anything else, so we might as well just waste our time, right? Because obviously they're inside of a whale's mouth, so eventually they're just gonna die. But the boy's literally gonna be killing the man, and I think this is a good opportunity because you mentioned, Steven, that like as the mother's passing away, she gets she has like a few lines that she progressively says, right? And I think that's if anyone's familiar with motifs, leitmotifs, and themes, I feel like it's one of those things. It's either a leitmotif, it should be a leitmotif because it's very similar to it represents a meaning within the story, like exactly the message or the mission that the mother's giving to the kid. And like, give me a sec to just hear. Yeah, it's just a bunch of adjectives that she wants her son to just do to them. It's like drag him through a hole, tear his nails off to the splinters, and it's following this tune that goes along with it. And as progressively as the story goes, that tune is effectively like the wound that's inside of him, because it's just, I need you to do this one thing, and it's just to wreck this guy. And what's really great is that at the end of the entire 8 minute long music video or like song, um, what's the after there's no lyrics in Rival Sisters, there's no one singing it, but the thing that's actually playing in the background is that exact same tune that follows what the mother's directions of what to happen in that moment. And if you read some of the comments, you can actually see that at the end of the video, people describe that as audio violence, because even though no one is saying anything, we have a very good idea of what the boy is doing to that old man.
Yeah, the instrumental, the whole. Oh, so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I wanted to speak on that because the musicality of it, I think, was one of the most unique. Most shanties are done in 4/4 or 6/8, right? So 4/4 is like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6/8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have two different key signatures for most shanties, or they stay consistently one or the other. In the Mariner's Revenge song, you see it go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it stays that way, right? Then you have the mother's death, which is a big one, and it slows down. And now it's like 1, 2, 3, or like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 which is like 2/4 time or something. And then it speeds up to like 6/8. And then by the end, it's like full on 6/8. It's completely different from the rest of the theme. It's like full revenge, right? So like you said, it speeds up, it picks up pace. It's like audio death. So the whole point is like by changing the key signature, just the key signature, increasing the pace of the notes. So now instead of like it just being quarter notes, it's like eighth notes, and it goes really, really quickly. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So by doing that, it increases not only does it increase the speed, but for us mentally as the audience, we're seeing it like the song itself change completely from what we're used to. Because the entire time in the song, it never truly deviates from 4/4. It stays in that realm of like 2/4 or 4/4 time. So it goes like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So we never really like go really, really quickly until the end, where that's where it drops. So when the beat effectively quote unquote drops and the song picks up and it changes key signatures, is when we kind of, as the audience, understand what's happening. I mean, I think that point is like really cool and really interesting to make.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I definitely, even without no experience in music theory or whatever, I feel that the boy is just like wailing on him and just pummeling this this dude to the ground as the pace increases. And I mean, if you read the comments, everyone, like a good amount of people, get that vibe too. And it's great that you were actually able to describe.
I actually had a question about the key signature stuff.
Mhm.
So 4/4 is pretty intuitive, and it seems like very like simple. Um, and when 6/8, that seems like a little off and less intuitive. Would you say that this would make it feel chaotic?
Oh, 100%, right? Because by using eighth notes, it's going a lot more quicker. So you're playing it at a much, much different speed. And so usually, even in like classical music, it's like when you start playing in eighth notes, it changes the entire on almost tonality, if that's even a word, of the music of the song. And so I would definitely agree, especially in shanties, right, where it usually sticks with like one structure or another. It's pretty cool to see how like it's intermingled. So then at the end, when we get that shift into 6/8 time, it just becomes insane. Like you're like, what just happened? So chaos is almost the perfect way to describe it, I think. So you're right on the money there.
Oh, that reminds me. So I would imagine shanties would stay pretty simple so that they could be comforting.
Exactly. Yeah, because like at the core of it, right? Shanties were songs created from sea workers. So they usually go with like the way I don't honestly the wave of the sea or whatever, but it was very like one like down down up. So it would go like you can tell it has a very distinct rhythm and it stays extremely consistently. So like even though this is a shanty and the fact that it's taking two different key signatures and putting them together, it makes it very unique. Like it's still a shanty, but like it's stretching what it means to be a shanty, you know what I mean? But I think it's kind of cool, so.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine some guy just drops that in the middle of like dinner or something.
Yeah, literally.
It's like, what the hell? This is going
Like
wild.
even see if I was singing the shot on the ship and then I instantly changed to 6/8, they'd be like, dude, what's wrong with you? What are you
What is-
doing? I'm
we have
like,
a,
chill.
so we have a rhythm. It's easy to remember. We're teaching ourselves lessons. Like we don't need what you're doing. It's it's beautiful. Very much like it. I think
So I just wanted to point out that like I think it's kind of cool that like the key signatures it like even down to the key signatures plays a factor in how the story is told.
yeah,
I think it's super sick. So
it's a very smart, well developed song. I mean, like, and it's heightened by the entire animation. The very grim animation the company said that has that whole flapjack vibe to it. It just elevates the song's quality, and they do such a good job with it, and actually understanding like the kind of the vibe that the song is giving, because it's a grim tale. The boy is doubling down on this one revenge plot that his mother completely made his entire life revolve around. It's just, and like Steven mentioned, it's a very patriarchal kind of society or like culture, and he completely ruined them. And at the end of the day, I feel almost that while she might have given up the whole aspect of being a true mother, because the on the flip side of patriarchy, you would have a mother who's a very loving character and whatnot. She completely abandons that aspect of her identity and says, you know what, I gave life to you, I know what should be done here, I should make it so that you can move on past this moment of your life that I kind of, for my for my awful decisions of just bringing this man into our life, I ruined us, right? Because I'm now dying from like syphilis or whatever it might be the case. um I should just set you free, but instead of that, I'm just gonna, I just can't. I cannot move past the other aspect that he just she's still a woman, and in that respect, she was completely done for by this one guy. So she gave up on being a mother, but she continued being a woman in that aspect. I think that's
Mhm.
really cool. I love revenge plots because of that. I think that this is a very quintessential revenge plot, and especially with the music theory behind it and all the key signatures that we can find, and it's also very witty. I think that the accompanying lyrics themselves are very smart.
I was just thinking about something right now. Um, he was so young. He would
He was
not really understand what was going on.
no,
All he could understand was what his mom told him.
that's true. She was very manipulative in that aspect. He could, of course, feel the fear that the old man kind of instilled on his mother
Yeah,
because
could
he
have
was
been
abusive.
abusive, which I wouldn't
Yeah,
doubt.
but definitely the whole. I mean, he was 3, and it was like what 15 years ago. So he's 18. He was like, and the other man was 18 too. So 15 years.
18,
So
15,
yeah, he's like 30, some 32.
23, something like that.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it was 3. The guy was in his life. It was 15 years ago or something like that. And then he spent the rest of his life just almost. I mean, like he's a child that no one wants to like raise in this like time where medicine isn't all that progressive. It's like what, during the 1800s, I would imagine, or whenever pirating was a thing, 1700s probably. Nonetheless, yeah, like one of the reasons, and I
I think
love the fact
wherever
that
whaling is popular.
yeah. Okay, so another thing that people mentioned in the song is like the captain, right? The old man, or the pirate or whatever that he went to get. He was getting done by 2 people, right? The whale that swallowed the whaler, and then the kid. So there
Yeah.
was like 2 people who were out for revenge. 1 the whale, and 2 the boy. And it's also great that the boy acknowledges, and it's interesting, right? Because even when his revenge story was gonna like finish because he was like catching up to the guy in his ship, right, with an opposing ship. It was then and it was in that moment that everything goes to hell because the whale just eats both of their ships and just kills everyone in the crew except him and the one guy he was looking for. Or maybe it's not even that guy. Maybe it's just a random guy that he doesn't know. Because we never get a full confirmation. I think you can of course make a case that the person that he did find was the same one that ruined them many years ago, or nonetheless, what happens to that man gets done. But it was great that the writers of the story made it so that this boy had one last opportunity to just not go with his revenge song because there was no point to it. They were both gonna die, and he could have just died, quote unquote, a decent man. But that's no fun. That's never any fun.
Yeah, I think with the phrase, so when they're in the whale, don't
Yeah.
know how I survived. The whole crew is chewed alive. Must have slipped between his teeth, and then at the end, what divine intelligence?
Yes.
I think that's him coping
Yeah.
because like it's like obviously there isn't any kind of divine intelligence. It was all luck. He's admitting this was a very lucky, unlikely situation to have happened. And then he's kind of coping and just being like, okay, so the whale had to have known it's some sort of outside worldly luck that here I can have my revenge in this whale.
Yeah. That you should here. I have the lyrics pulled up. It's like that you should survive as well as me. It gives my heart great joy to see your eyes fill with fear. So lean in close, and I will whisper the last word you're here. So those last words he heard is probably the same last words that his mother that he heard from his mother. Because after that, we get the instrumental that accompanies the mother's chanting her mission. It's great. It's great. Good to have these lyrics pulled up. By the way, they're really useful.
Also, did you guys catch the compare? Well, I know we talked about Flapjack and the whole Flapjack vibe, but did you guys also catch the comparison to Moby Dick?
Ah, I mean,
Oh,
I
wait.
don't know. I never read
I don't
Moby
know Moby
Dick.
Dick too well. All I know is whales, whaling,
Yeah.
and revenge. No, obsession.
Yeah, yeah, pretty
Obsession.
much, right? So it's like the protagonist is trying to extract revenge on a guy who's a whale hunter, and Moby Dick, it's literally about him just extracting revenge on a whale. So I think it's kind of funny. Uh, the whale motif very evident in Western shanty-esque songs. I don't even, to be honest, I'm not actually sure if this is a shanty because it doesn't follow the keynotes of a shanty, but it's shanty-esque is I think the best way to put it.
Yeah,
So
I think we can be pretty loose with definition since it's a modern. Um, it's a modern recreating
Yeah,
an old.
because the old one had restrictions to it, right? They needed to have a purpose, and this one
Yeah.
keeps that kind of like it's a legacy piece, right? No, it's a legacy tribute, you know. So
You could
I'm
call it a
willing to call
contemporary. I think that's a pretty
pretty
accurate
good one.
description. Contemporary
Yeah,
shanty.
for sure. We also cannot. I don't want to ignore the fact that the guy was also probably crazy. I mean, he also saw his like ghost mother once, and then she kept talking to him. There is one thing I must say to you as you sail across the sea. Always your mother will watch over you as you avenge this wicked deed. She never gave a damn about him, dude. He just wishes that she, cares about him. Oh, always your mother will watch over you. That's like the sweetest
That's where
thing.
he finds it. Where he finds his mother's love.
Yeah, in her ghostly image, as long as he continues to be her avatar.
I'll be anything you want me to be, mom.
It's like, that's a good one, Steven. If that's another cartoon reference if everyone doesn't know. It's from Billy and Mandy in the when I think they took Billy to court and then Mandy brought Jeff the spider over as a witness.
Yeah.
And then how does it go, Steve?
Oh yeah. They're asking him, how would you describe Billy as a caregiver? Well, he never really remembered my birthday or paid child support. Really, he just jabs me with a stick. And then, well, I'll jab you good. Why won't you love me, Dad? I'll be anything you want me to be. I want you to be Dad.
Oh, it's so good. I love Billy and Mandy.
So
Did you ever watch Billy and Mandy, Nikhil?
Of course,
Beautiful.
it's a good show. I watched it so long ago. Oh my god, when I was a child.
So I was thinking of the themes, right? Something motif that Francisco mentioned just right now, or a little bit ago. So themes, pretty much like, um, if we think of anime in Death Note, every character kind of has their own theme going on.
Yes,
So when
yes.
their theme starts playing in the episode, you're like, oh, this is their moment, or this is where they're gonna shine. He was behind it, or something like that.
The light, the light theme and the L theme. Oh my god, iconic. Like speaking to that, I think anime does it fairly well too, right? I think like in very specific anime, I think they do it considerably well, and specifically music anime. So it's no surprising that within anime, there's like a whole genre literally dedicated to like the idea of music and like music in as like a kind of storytelling as a part of the storytelling medium that drives the narrative. A really, really, really good example of this is actually Symphonium. If you guys have watched it, it's I mean, it's a show that literally just is about music and like playing in a band and some other stuff, but that's a whole different conversation. And so, like that, I think Euphonium is a really, really good example because each character has their own theme with their own instrument, which I think is kind of cool. And like how they play that instrument and how they use that instrument. So not just play and use, but also like the background music is really, 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 really important for the entire duration of the show. Um, and so I think like that's a good example, and Death Note I think is a really, really good example and very popular, right? Because everyone knows, I think everyone knows Death Note at this point, and everyone knows like Light's theme and Elves theme. It's like all over the place, so it's not surprising. I think another really good one actually is the Beastars opening and ending. If anyone is familiar with Beastars, we did an episode on it. I should watch it. But the season two Beastars OP and ED are literally very similar to the Mariner's Revenge song, and the fact that the opening is literally a story, right? The opening is a story about Lugosi trying to overcome the beast within him, right? About him not wanting to kill Haru. The ending is about like being friends or having a relationship with someone who's a herbivore as a carnivore. And it's so unique, and Yasabi kills it. So I think those are two really, really, really good examples of similar kind of like storytelling elements in anime. And by the way, for those of you who want to watch these, we'll be linking all of these in our Twitter. So if you're interested, check us out on Twitter, and then you can like watch the videos accordingly or see the videos that we're talking about specifically.
Yeah. And if anyone's interested in learning more about just music theory in general, there's a really good channel called Sideways on YouTube. And specifically, I actually ended up sharing a video that Sideways posted back in 2016, theme versus leitmotif. And the person in charge of the actual channel has an actual degree in this in this kind of deal, so they know what they're talking about. Unlike me, who's not entirely familiar with this, because there is a distinction between theme and leitmotif, right? A theme, or the subject is the complete musical idea, and a motif itself, that one's more about like it cannot represent something, but a leitmotif is a fragment of it, and it usually represents or it must represent something within the narrative. I try to remember a leitmotif as being a noun, while a theme is the overarching story itself. Not very, not the most very academic definition of them, but it's worked for me, right? And usually.
Oh, right, right. I always forget that in literature class they talk motifs and they talk themes.
Yeah. Nah, don't worry about it. They're lame anyway. As long as we get cool vibes from them, it's fine. And by them, I mean stories.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Steve, do you have anything else to say about music as a medium? I
Mm.
know, I mean, the reason I brought you along is because you're like one of the people that I know that listens to a lot of music. and we have a lot of music taste that we share in common.
Mhm.
And then the other side, Nikhil is also someone who that I know that listens to a ton of music, as he already mentioned. So I felt that bringing you two would be interesting in this case, in particular, talking about just music as a medium.
I think audio stimulation in general is something we're all very sensitive to. Um, like for example, our reaction speed to audio cues is like what is it like point? It's like 150 milliseconds, and uh, our reaction speed to visual cues about 250 milliseconds. We can distinguish language from each other from speech pretty well, and it's like very complicated, like the nuance of the tone inflection and all that. So music as a medium is going to be super like powerful in delivering messages, but also messages at a subconscious level. So when we use it in storytelling, movies, video games, and all that, it means so much intuitively. And even if we don't all have like degrees or have studied music past like maybe music theory, 1 or 100, it's definitely something that we can all speak from experience and then understand from experience and talk about just because like we're constantly stimulated by the whole time and we're sensitive to it.
I think drawing from personal experience too. The a few weeks ago, I went to my first rave. Not really a rave person, to be honest. I went because I was like, you know what? My cousin bought the tickets. Why not go, right? So I went. It was for an artist by the name of Illenium. I'm sure most people have heard of him. If you've heard like Takeaway, yeah, I'm sure you've heard of it to some degree. And so I went, and it was really interesting because there's no like it was just like straight electronic music, like, but it was very. There was a story. So what he did was it was like a visual story on these huge screens, and then it was just really hype music playing behind that, right? Hype being it wasn't really hype, it was just a different kind of hype. And so like you could craft your own story based on the visuals, but what really drove the narrative of that story that you were watching was the music that you were hearing behind it. And it made me realize that like music as a source, like I listen to I think every single thing across the board, everything from rap to K-pop. So you name it, I listen to it. I just I've always kind of thought of music, I think in a sense of most of the time an artist is conveying a certain feeling or telling a story through their lyrics, right? Which I mean in the most part is true. Like rap literally stands for rhyme and poetry. It is a medium that is supposed to tell a story through lyrics or lyricism. But I think when I went to this Millennium concert, this rave, it was the first time I was like, huh, like this like music, like not like with lyrics, like music can tell a story in of itself without having to actually say anything. That's pretty cool. So it's like nuts to kind of think about.
It is pretty nutty. I think in most cases when it comes to directors and then composers within the industry, right, and especially within Hollywood, they don't communicate with each other very well or at all, and that's a very so it's not very good when well for a movie when the music composer and director are not on the same page, or rather it's a missed opportunity since as Steven mentioned, we are very in tune with audio cues, and having both of these very impactful positions in a movie working together elevates the quality of the piece. I'm sure both of you would agree with this, but I can actually give an example. I once heard that the original music composer for the 2001's A Space Odyssey, the director fell in love with the sample piece that he shared with the music composer, so the person in charge of developing the score for the actual movie, as the reference piece, right? Because this is usually how it happens, or as far as I'm aware, how it happens in Hollywood. A composer or like the director finds a sample that they're thinking about in a scene, and this is like a minimum level of communication that they might have, right? So they find a sample, they share this reference with the music composer, and they tell them that, hey, this is kind of what I'm picturing when I'm thinking of the scene. Can you make something that sounds like this, right? So that's all good enough. And you know what? the movie 2001 Space Odyssey, I haven't seen it, but of course it's a very successful movie. But it's so ridiculous that such a thing happened, and the music composer only learned only learned that their music on the film wasn't used when they went to see the film on release day, which is devastating. I actually heard the story from a YouTube content creator, the Sideways individual that I mentioned a while back. They also made the theme versus leitmotif video. So once again, I guess it's another shout out. But if you like that kind of stuff, that kind of video essays, but in particular, focusing on music itself or music composition and storytelling, it's a good place to watch it. 100%. I don't even know if they got paid, but
Wait, no
it's an
payment.
I hope they did. I don't know,
Yeah,
right? I didn't look into the story too much because it was depressing.
it's because they contract work. You do it, and whether or not they use it.
That's true. I would imagine that, but nonetheless, right? This lack of communication between composer and director isn't good, and I think it's a lot. I feel I this is just a random opinion of mine, but because of how influential or how important music is when it comes to the fans for anime, I would imagine the composer and director have a closer connection with one another when it comes to actually, telling the story. But I don't know, maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. Nonetheless, it's just fun sharing this one story on the Odyssey 2001.
I
Don't
definitely think you're right, because like a really good example of some like on the opposite end of the spectrum where it works really really well is Miyazaki films. I don't even think we need to go as far as like Death Note and stuff, right? Like Studio Ghibli movies personify how good music motifs can be in different in storytelling mediums. The first thing that comes to mind is Kiki's Delivery Service and Spirited Away. They use that motif to the T. They know exactly how to make music make you feel things. Even if it's like not like super sentimental, like you feel it, you know what I mean? Like for example, when Haru's not Haru, what's her name? Um
or you mean Spirit Away person?
yeah, the girl, the little girl, what's her name?
Oh, dude, I haven't seen Spirit Away in years.
I should know this. I watched it like 3 times this year. It is my favorite Studio Ghibli movie ever.
Steve, have you seen any Studio Ghibli movies?
Chihiro. Oh my god, how did I forget that?
I
Anyway,
love Ponyo.
I
Yeah.
love Ponyo. Trust, we'll have an extensive discussion about Ponyo. Uh, so when Chihiro's parents get turned into pigs, the music is very staccato, right? It's very like dun 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 dun, and then you like you feel it, and you're like, whoa, like something serious going on. You know what I mean? So if the director and the composer are on the same page, the 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 overall narrative and the product will be that much better. Another great example actually is Star Wars. But
That's
um,
actually an interesting example. The composer wasn't familiar. It's not that it's a great example of Star Wars. It's more so of a great example of the composer himself.
I mean George
They,
Lucas is also like low key a genius, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna undermine George Lucas, but we can't forget that George Lucas didn't have any confidence within Star Wars when it first came out, and this was one because he was a new director at that time, right? He didn't think it was gonna do as well as it did, but he wasn't planning 6 movies or even a trilogy. So when he went to the composer,
Steven Spielberg. I'm sorry, not George Lucas. Steven Spielberg is a
oh,
genius.
oh,
George Lucas is I,
Oh, I
but
love those.
Steven
Okay.
Spielberg literally nuts.
okay, yeah, that guy, yeah, good, but that, yeah, um, yeah, it's a genius. But right, he needed to work with the fact that okay, now George Lucas, and his company is coming to me saying we need more music, and the way that the composer was able to get around that, it was that he understood music theory very well. That he just understood that if he just turns a music sheet backwards or like just reverse, that's an entire new music score right then and there in front of you, and it's still thematically very similar to the original that he had, and he can just write or work around the incompetencies of the rest of the team.
Yo, let me list off a few Spielberg movies real quick, and let's just admire how iconic the score is. E.T.,
E.T.
Jaws, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones. Uh, Yeah, I'd say those are super iconic in
Without a doubt.
musical scores.
Without a doubt. I actually haven't seen E.T., by the way.
Good.
Oh, it's so hype when
It's
they go
good.
flying in the air.
It's a good movie. I enjoyed it.
It looked weird.
Jurassic Park. Oh, that one lives rent free in my head.
Jurassic Park. It lives rent free in my head because I keep thinking of Ironers and Iron Mouse VTubers. Do you have anything else to say, Steve?
Um, not really. Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay. Okay. We did go off topic, but I mean, the intent of this entire episode was to talk about music within, different mediums. And of course, we got away from Mariner's Revenge song. If anyone, you probably haven't heard about it. It has a ton of views, but I would imagine a good amount of those are rewatches from people like me and Steve. But nonetheless, it's a good song, good video. Definitely get around to watching it, and think more of the music you're listening to every now and then, or maybe not, or maybe you just want to be in the moment, which I don't fault you for just being in the moment.
The video that we were talking about this episode will also be posted on Twitter, on our Twitter. So make sure to follow us on Anime House for more information. And we'll also repost or have a link to the video on YouTube when we put this video up on YouTube. That way, you'll have a link to the video directly, so you can reference it. And yeah, I mean, we'll have ways for you guys to get there, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But please, yeah, definitely watch this if you get the chance, and then listen to our episode. And curious to see what you think. I mean, it's only 8 minutes. Doesn't take very long. You can listen to it right before you go to sleep. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's great. And of course, the comment sections are really, really informative. It's just they're great to just read, after you watch the video. But yeah, nonetheless, thank you, Steven, for coming along and giving your insight. Because I always like hearing your voice and
Oh,
everything you have to say.
pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm glad you guys asked me to come. It was
I
good.
mean, I'm, I know that you just gotta work, so I'm not. It might have been a lot to ask from you, but
I
I
was tired, but I was still excited to talk about this, so it was worth it.
thank you, Steve. Thank you. All right,
Thank you for
everyone.
making it. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
Mm.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
All right, I guess that's it. Bye, guys.